Hello, I'm Bjorn, and welcome back to another short. Bjorn? Shorn? Bjorgen. We're gonna go with Bjorgen story. It's a Bjorgen story. That's the pun. Yeah, this is another short script, origin for a DC character. Something that will probably be a trend going forward. These are really easy to write. We'll get a Marvel one eventually. I did a Deadlands one, so technically this isn't all DC, but obviously this one we're doing Red Rocket, of course, featured in the Get Out Guys, which I would recommend the official viewing order. We'll go ahead and lay this out like your the MCU official watch order. I would recommend the Get Out Guys 1 before anything else. Then the Mind Boggler short and this short. Get Out Guys Act 2 if you haven't already watched it, then Get Out Guys Act 3. I think that is the ideal viewing order in my opinion. But you can watch these in whatever order you want. I would definitely recommend watching at least the Get Out Guys Part 1 before watching this though. So if you haven't watched that, it's up here. This is the origin story for the antagonist of that film, of course, the Red Rocket. Specifically the Red Rocket Brigade. There are multiple Red Rockets in the script. The script will focus on Wei and Hanzu, who are the main two rockets featured in the script. They give them a screen time. Wei is, of course, the leader of the Red Rockets and gets a ton of screen time as the script goes on. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into this.
We're going to open on darkness. We hear a voice. Alright people, we got 30 seconds to live. Final checks, go. And I'm going to go ahead and go without saying that basically all of the dialogue here would be in Mandarin or traditional Chinese. But, you know, it's all in English because I don't speak Mandarin, so. But just imagine, I like when you set a movie in a certain location that you get actors that speak that language to do it. You know, personally, I've always preferred subtitles for stuff like that instead of just having them speak English for no reason. So, yeah, just kind of imagine in your brains that all this is in, you know, Mandarin. We're gonna hear a second voice. All right, check. 1, 3, we have functioning audio. Another voice. Check 5, cameras on, connection live. The darkness fades until we see a large camera with a man mounting it. Colorful lights seem to be lighting him from off stage. He holds up his fingers and counts down. 3, 2, 1. An orchestra begins to play an upbeat jingle, and the camera spins around to reveal an entire talk show set. Massive letters over the stage clearly indicate the name of the show. Late Evening with Zhan Jiang. A tall, handsome Chinese man takes the stage, to the sound of applause and the swelling of the music. After a bit of waving and smiling, the applause dies down. Zhan clearly says, "Boy, do we have a good show for you today, people. With me in this very building is none other than the hero of China. That's right, folks. We've got the real Red Rocket here with us today, Wei Xiang." The audience goes wild and crazy and cheering breaks out. The man smiles and claps along with them. He's going to give us an exclusive look into his life and the man behind the hero. Come on out here, Wei. We see Wei nervously exit the curtains. He looks kind of awkward and obviously very, very nervous. Text on screen below him as he walks out says 8 years before the Get Out Guys. Wei looks around awkwardly, then makes his way over to the talk show host. The two shake hands, and we can hear the talk show host mumble under his breath, whispering to him, "Hey, smile a little. Trust me, they'll love it." Wei sort of nods, and then smiles awkwardly. He's clearly not very good on stage, and he's never been on before. The cheering from the audience gradually dims, and the two take seats. Zhan, the talk show host, says, "Let me be the first to say thank you for your service, and what an honor it is to host your official first late night appearance." The audience goes wild again. I think I speak for all of us when I say, we appreciate what you do for China and people everywhere. Wei says, "Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I could have never imagined something like this." Zhan says, "You didn't want to be famous when you were a kid?" Wei says, "No, if I'm being honest. My dream was always to be an engineer, but even then I didn't have time for dreams like that." The talk show host smiles and nods. "I imagine not. Well, your childhood seems the best place to start. Now, I know you recently put out a book telling the whole story, truth and all, dark and grit. But I want to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. How did Wei Xiang, orphan child in the poorest district of China, become a superhero known the world over? Wei says, with hard work. I suppose that's probably not the answer you're looking for, though. Look, Zan, it can be hard to understand what life was like for me if you've never experienced that kind of hardship. And luckily for me, most of the people in this audience haven't. And that's a good thing. That's a sign of how far we've come as a country. The talk show host says, okay, then paint a picture for us. Help us understand. Wei says, I actually think I had a good childhood, all things considered. My dad was the one who made me the man I am today. He taught me to help others and gave me a good home while he was alive. Zan says, so he was your inspiration then? Tell us about him. Wei says, he was a great guy. One of a kind, really. He worked dangerous jobs just to keep me fed. But when he got home, he always spent time with me, even when I knew he was exhausted. He was an electrical engineer, you see, a really good one. Worked on high-rise buildings and large-scale construction efforts. And near the end, he worked on a failing power plant, trying to turn it around. He never really got to go to school, but he knew his trade well, and he taught me everything he knew about it while he was alive. I loved it. We're going to see a younger Wade. We're going to cut to a flashback. He's working on an electrical board. His father carefully guides him, pointing out where the places the wires are and where to solder. When Wei's father is gone, we see Wei pull some of his books off the shelves and begin to read in sort of a time lapse. We get shots of schematics and technical plans, guides for different construction efforts, and pieces of engineering. However, something is different this day when Wei's father comes home. He has a massive cut on his shoulder, loosely wrapped in bandages. He sits down in his reclining chair and groans. We see Wei approach him with a little plastic box. He opens it up and removes a needle and thread for medical care. He carefully takes the loose bandages off his dad's shoulders and starts to close the wound with his needle. His father looks at him with clear shame. It's obvious that they've done this before. Wei's father gives him a half-hearted smile. I'm sorry, Wei. Boy your age shouldn't have to do this. Wei says, why do you do it? You're good, Dad. As good as the guys in these books. I've seen you work. Why not work on something better, something safer? Wei's father smiles and says, because people rely on us there. Without me, the plant would stop working and no one in this area would have power. Who knows how long it'd be till they got someone out here to fix it. We each play a small part in a big picture. We are a part of a whole, and it's our duty to work for that part. Just like we need food from the farmers to eat and work. The farmer needs power from the plant to run his farming equipment. It's our job to help raise the people up together. Everyone has an important part to play, and fixing the factory is mine. Wei's eyes kind of go wide and he nods. I think I get it. Someday I want to run the plant just like you. Wei's father's smile turns to a frown. You could, but the plant's dangerous, boy, and there's much better things for you out there than the plant. You could do things I could never imagine. I never got a degree, but you could. With it, you could help so many more people. Work on bigger projects, Wei. You're gifted. We're going to cut back to the talk show. Wei says, you see, Zan, I knew even then I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to go to school, but that's a hard thing for a kid with no money or prospects. My dad, he tried, but, well, one day he didn't come home. We're going to see a shot of younger Wei sitting on the floor reading one of his dad's books. He occasionally looks up, staring at the door. He's clearly tired. He's been awake for a while. We hear a knock on the door. Wei quickly jumps up. Dad, you're out! But as he opens the door, it's not his dad. It's two workers in overalls. Their faces are burnt and covered in muck, and they look sad. It's clear Wei's father is dead. We're going to cut back to the talk show. Zan says, I remember that part in the book well. It was tragic. I can only imagine how hard that was. And if I remember, after your dad passed, you were sent to a state-run orphanage. I mean, that must have been even tougher, to be so alone at your age. Wei says, yeah, it was scary. I didn't know exactly what to expect. We're going to cut to him in the back of a car going down a winding road. He's being moved through an industrial area. It's covered in smog and massive production factories raised from the landscape around him. Soon they pull up to a large stone building, the orphanage. We see Wei being led through a beautiful entrance complete with marble and art. He seems to relax a bit, but they keep moving. They pass through another set of doors, and then another. The art, the beauty, the extravagance seems to disappear the closer and deeper they get. The wall art turns to plain concrete, and the floors to cheap carpet or unadorned wood. Finally, we start to see some children. They look gaunt, with sunken eyes. Many of them are dirty or have injuries. All their clothes are covered in grime and dirt, and some are even torn. Wei is led to a large room with 20 cots placed in rows. They lead him to an empty bed at the end of a row. They point to the bed and leave. Another boy is sitting on the bed next to Wei's. Like the other kids, he looks pale, skinny, and is wearing dirty clothes. He says, "You're new, huh?" Wei says, "Yeah." The kid says, I'm sorry then. I'm Hanzu." Hanzu obviously being the character from the Get Out guys. Wei says, "I'm Wei Jiang." Hanzu says, "Well, Wei, good luck. You're gonna need it." We're gonna cut to night. We see Wei laying on his cot looking up at the ceiling. Suddenly, we hear a crying baby. We see two nurses each carrying a different crying baby down the hall. Their screaming grows louder and louder as they pass the open door. One of the nurses looks through the door and sees Wei sitting up. She shoots him a look and then keeps moving. We hear Hanzu whisper from where he's laying down, "Lay down. You can't let them see that you're up after curfew." Wei looks at him, then lays down again. He whispers, "They were carrying babies." Hanzu says, "Just don't worry about it." Wei says, "Why not?" Hanzu says, "The babies, they disappear. They never stay too long. It's best not to think about it." Wei asks, "Where do they go?" Hanzu says, "I don't know." Wei says, "This place is hell, isn't it?" Hanzu smiles lightly. He says, "You should get some sleep. The real hell begins in the morning." We see a shot of Wei laying in bed. He looks up at the ceiling again, and he begins to cry. We're gonna cut to an old vinyl record. It's empty. We see someone with old, wrinkled hands place a vinyl onto the player, and it begins to spin. We can see a microphone sitting next to the record. We hear Vivaldi's The Winter. Is it the season of the winter? It's the Four Seasons Winter. Classical music. It'll be linked in the playlist below. Begin to play from the speaker. Suddenly the music begins to echo through the halls, playing through the speakers. All of the kids leap out of their beds and speed to get dressed in their grimy clothes. Wei looks around confused. Hanzu says, "Hurry, put the clothes on." Wei does, throwing them on as quickly as he can. Soon we see 3 staff members enter the room. They gather up all the children in a line and then lead them down the hallways. They put them onto a bus, and we watch as the children are driven down away from the orphanage. Wei turns to Hanzu. "Where are we going?" Hanzu says, "To work." We see the bus pass through an industrial district. Trash litters the ground and smog rises towards the air. A large factory building looms overhead. We see it stylistically shot. The classical music picks up more intensely. We see the children being led inside the factory. Old grizzled workers look up at them with hollowed eyes. The kids are being put onto an assembly line and made to assemble pieces of electronics. The more I thought about this, I thought it might be kind of interesting to have them like assemble kids' toys of an American superhero. Except unfortunately in my sort of miniature Bjorn verse we've got going here, the Justice League is just now forming, and this is like, I think this is like 90s or late 80s, sometime like that. So I think maybe this is the Justice Society of America toys, or maybe some individual superheroes. I don't know. I'd really have to think about it. But still, I think the symbolicness of that is pretty good for the character. The kids are each putting the toys together and then putting them back on the assembly line over and over again as the music hits up. We begin to see a time lapse of the work. Wei doesn't even have to practice. He's doing it naturally. All the skills he got from his father make him expert at putting this together. In a weird way, he almost seems to enjoy it. Hanzu, who's next to him, whispers, "You're pretty good at that. Were you in an orphanage before?" Wei says, "No, my dad taught me." We get a montage of all the children working. Several hurt themselves. We see cuts or smashed hands. By the time Wei finishes, his fingers are sliced to ribbons from the electronic parts. Eventually, a loud horn sounds and the children begin to line up again. We see them trudge towards the bus. We get a quick shot of the bus arriving back to the orphanage. The kids are funneled back down the halls, back into their rooms. Wei lays back in bed. Hanzu says, "We do it every day, just about. Sometimes they give us a day off." Wei says, "Does anyone ever leave?" Hanzu shakes his head. "I mean, some kids get older and every once in a while they take someone to get adopted, but it almost never happens." Wei shakes his head. I didn't know it was like this." Han says, "They don't tell anyone. That's why they have the fake part of the orphanage up front. It's all for show. They don't want people to know what they're really doing here." We're going to see Wei laying in bed staring at the ceiling. Again, he starts to cry. Again, we hear the classical music start up in the morning. Again, he's taken on the bus. We see it about 10 times playing back in succession. We see Wei and Han growing up. Wei teaches Han how to properly put together the electronics so he can do it quicker, safer. They get older. We see some shots of Han and Wei stealing a book from the headmaster's office, some stuff like that. Maybe they're trying to educate themselves while they're in the orphanage. And then one morning, it changes. One of the workers at the orphanage comes to Wei and says, "Wei, come with us." They take him down the hall, back towards the front of the building, and into a bathroom. They point to a tub of water and Wei climbs into it. They start to clean him. They clean his hair and work the grime from his skin and under his nails. They pull him out and dry him. They put him into nice clothes, comb his hair. They quickly whisk him back down the hall. Wei leaves the concrete halls behind and is taken back into the beautiful front hall. The workers lead him towards a room. They stop in front of a door. Wei asks, "What is this?" The woman looks down at him with cold eyes and says, "You might get adopted. Smile, be personable, let them know how intelligent you are. Try your best. We'll be expecting it." Wei's taken into the room. We see an older man and a woman sitting at a table. They look over the kid, sort of analyzing him, studying Wei. Wei smiles his best smile at them, but it's a little awkward, very forced, just like in the talk show we just saw. Wei says, "Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Wei Xiang." The man sort of grunts. The woman who's with him says, "He's a very intelligent boy, quick-witted. He's good at sports and is personable with the other kids. He is athletic and talented." The man looks him over and says, "We'll think about it. Please, can we speak about him?" The woman nods. She takes Wei out into the hall and leaves him there. She shuts the doors behind her, but we can still hear the talking inside. We can hear the man say, "He's just not what we're looking for. Do you have one who's taller? A son of mine has to be attractive, perfect. You know how important I am. I'm not looking for a second-class child." As Wei listens through the door, he looks sad. His one chance at escape, gone. He turns, and we see a sort of poster board, a pamphlet set up for the military. He snags one of the military pamphlets and tucks it into his pants pocket. We cut to Wei being placed back into the orphanage. Hanzu looks at him sadly. He says, "They didn't want you?" Wei shakes his head. Han says, "Then they're foolish." Wei gives him a half-hearted smile. They sit in silence for a moment. Hanzu says, "I'm sorry, Wei." Wei says, "It's fine. I hate this place, and I'm gonna get out of here, Han." Hanzu says, "You can't. I've seen kids try. They don't come back, but they don't get away either." Wei says, "Not like that. The military. I stole a pamphlet." Wei carefully unfolds the military recruitment pamphlet. "As soon as we turn 16, we can join. Only 2 more years, and they can't stop us from freedom." We're going to smash cut back to the talk show. I mean, it must have been difficult growing up in an orphanage environment like that. So, can you tell us a little bit about it? Wade looks off screen into the distance. We see a man in a military uniform smoking a cigar. He gives Wei a knowing look. Wei sighs and says, "I won't lie, Zan. Life in the orphanage was a bit of a struggle. But I wasn't alone. I had a friend. I'm sure many of you know Hanzu. Of course, he's a rocket now, but back then we were just kids. We helped each other stay strong. But it was the state that I owe so much. The state gave me everything I needed to overcome that difficulty. The orphanage program gave me a fighting chance, and if it weren't for the military, I don't know where I would have gone. They gave me and Hanzu a home, a purpose, and a chance to prove ourselves. The talk show host nods as if this is the expected answer. So, you joined the military with your best friend. The two of you went to school to study engineering. How did you guys end up working on the rockets program? Wei says, we passed a placement examination and were sent to an engineering school. We graduated the program as quick as we could and were given a post. They saw our potential and they gave us a chance on a major project to reverse engineer a piece of failed Russian technology. Of course, the Red Rocket. We're going to cut to another flashback. Older, I'd say like just out of college age, Hanzu and Wei are standing in a concrete room. Hanzu says, I can't believe they dumped us on this. This project is a joke. We're better than all of them. If our parents were important like theirs, then... Wei says, Han, they gave us something that's more than we had before. It's a chance. The camera turns to reveal several old-looking rocket suits. 3 of them. The last one is melted and burned. Hanzu says, it's a joke. This version killed its last pilot. Have you seen this? He pulls up a video on a, device of some kind. Of a suit on a rack. We see a Russian approaching in a strange metal-lined suit. He carries a small rod of metal. He inserts it into the suit, and the equipment begins to glow green. The Russians seem to celebrate as if it's worked. Then the suit begins to glow brighter and brighter. The man inside the rocket suit begins to scream and flail. The head of the suit erupts with strange green fire that glows. The camera begins to flicker, and the suit turns its head. Inside the burning fire, we can see a skull, the classic atomic skull look. Wei manually turns off the video in Hanzu's hand. It's a chance, Hanzu. We are better than those jokers back there, and you know it. So let's prove it. We are survivors. We're hard workers. We're tough. So let's do what we do best. Let's make this thing work. Can't you see the potential here? Hanzu shakes his head. I don't know. Wei says, I think with this suit we could change the country for the better. I see it. With this, we could augment our police force. Make them better capable of handling modern threats. We can protect this country and its people. I think we could change the country for the better. I see the potential, but I can't do it without you, Han. Can you trust me and give this a shot? Wei holds out his hand. Han sighs and takes it. How could I not? We're going to cut to another montage. We see them slowly building a new suit from the ground up, testing equipment, manipulating it. They grow older as they do, becoming more and more disheveled as they don't leave their work space. They engineer the robot, adding new effects, until it begins to resemble an actual suit. The one from the Get Out guys, maybe a little bit less technologically advanced. Soon, the first suit is joined by a second one, and the montage ends as the two stare at their work. Han says, okay, so you made it, and it works on paper. Wei nods his head. It works on paper. Han says, so what do we do? Wei says, we fly it. Han says, yeah, how are we going to do that? I mean, they'd never give us approval for that. Wei says, we don't ask for approval, we ask for forgiveness, right? Han gives a nervous laugh. Yeah, maybe. Wei says, just like stealing the books back at the orphanage. It's the only way, right? We knew they'd never let us have them unless we took them. Han says, I guess you're right. So, Wei says, I'll fly it. Han says, when? Wei says, I was thinking today. Han says, I mean, it's so sudden. Wei says, no time like the present, right? We don't know how long they're going to give us to work on this project. We have to prove this thing will work. We're going to cut to a beach somewhere. We'll see Hanzu carrying several boxes out of the back of his van. They're in sort of a desolate, sandy beach area. We'll say there's no one else around. The beach is kind of ugly. Maybe people wouldn't want to be there. Maybe it's in the evening. I don't know. You can come up with some explanation for why there's not people at the beach. Maybe it's very early in the morning. They begin to unpack parts of the rocket suit from the boxes and begin to assemble them until it's standing upright. Wei takes a deep breath and then approaches the suit. He gets inside it. We can see the same sort of HUD look from the Get Out guys as he's inside of it. Han asks, "Does everything look alright?" Wei says, yeah, it seems to be working." Han says, "Only one way to know for sure." Wei says, "Only one way to know for sure." He toggles a switch on the hand of the suit, and it begins to light up. We can hear its sort of engines begin to operate. Han says, "Remember, only 30 feet up, no higher." Wei smiles. "Only 30 feet up." He begins to operate the switch. We hear the sort of thrusters on the rocket suit come to life, and Wei begins to hover off the ground. The suit is working. He flies up higher and higher. We can see the sort of height meter on his suit registering 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet, 25, 30. He smiles and keeps going. 40, 50, 60, 70. We hear Hanzu come over his radio. "Hey, Wei, what are you doing? We said 30, right?" Wei says, "Yeah, 30. But I'm gonna be honest, Han. I think I can do better." He begins to go horizontal, actually flying the suit the way it was intended. 100 feet, 120 feet, 130 feet, 140 feet. He's going higher and higher. He begins to maneuver the suit, trying all kinds of moves. Then, with a smile, he lowers it back down to the beach and touches down next to Hanzu. He opens the face mask and says, "I think it works." Hanzu laughs and hugs the suit. Wei sort of gives him a fist bump looking thing. We're going to cut to Hanzu walking down the halls of the research laboratory. He's carrying a box in, clearly one of the boxes they took to the beach. As he's moving down the hall, we hear talking. A familiar voice, if you've seen the Get Out guys, it's the general, the one who's sort of in charge of their whole program. He's featured in that script several times. He's talking to someone else, but we can't see who it is. Han stops and presses against the wall, listening. The general says, "I like the kids, I really do. But that rocket program is a joke. It'll be scrapped in a month, and I'll find something else for them. Eventually, something else." Hanzu closes his eyes and slips away. We're going to cut to their workshop. We see the rocket suits hanging on the wall. Wei is unpacking the one that they took to the beach. He's putting it back together piece by piece on the rack where it was supposed to be. Hanzu walks in, angrily sets the box down. He says, "They're gonna can us. God damn it, Wei. Won't even give us a chance to prove ourselves." Wei says, "What are you talking about?" Hanzu says, "I heard the general in the hall. In a month they're gonna can our program and split us up, send us somewhere else." Wei says, "What? They're gonna can us? I mean, we haven't even gotten a chance." Hanzu says, "They don't even care. They just said the program's a joke. It was right, Wei. They were never gonna give us a chance." Wei sits in silence for a second as Hanzu fumes over their situation. Wei says, "But, we have a month, right? That's time. We can prove that it works. We can prove it. I mean, this thing," he gestures to the rocket suit. "I mean, you have to admit it's not a joke. We had a flight test. On paper, it's faster than a jet." Hanzu says, "I don't think that's going to matter." It sounded like he already made up his mind. Wei shakes his head. No, I won't take that. We're gonna get this thing working. We have our weapon systems installed. I mean, it's almost done. We have to iron out the kinks, but I think we can present it in 2 weeks." Hanzu says, "It'll be a stretch." Wei says, "Hell, I'll take a stretch over no chance at all." We're gonna cut to a different scene. We see a bunch of men standing in a room. We can see what are clearly propaganda posters declaring revolution and, bring down the government, things like that, classic revolutionaries. A man stands on a stage surrounded by 2 other men. He's clearly finished giving some impassioned speech to a crowd of revolutionaries. They're upset, they're fired up, they're ready to go. On the stage behind him, we see a large chamber surrounded by what appear to be gigantic lights. These are like kind of sci-fi looking lights. They're definitely not normal lights. The man begins to continue his speech. "Today is the day we worked so hard for. We tried peace. We've tried to protest, and they killed us for it." The people begin to cheer and chant in agreement. "The people need to open their eyes to the truth. If peace won't do it, then violence will have to carry the day. Today is that day. We're going to even the playing field. The men in the room cheer and holler even louder. The man giving the speech drops the microphone he was carrying. He says, "I'm ready." Another man hands him a vial. The second man says, "They claim this will work." Man says, "Even if it doesn't, I'm willing to die for the cause. Our people will be free." He downs the vial and then steps towards the giant chamber as the strange chemicals course through his veins. The man seals the door on the chamber. The massive lights begin to flicker on one by one, illuminating the chamber in blinding, glowing lights. We hear him screaming inside the chamber. Then that screaming gradually turns to laughter. Insane laughter. The lights grow brighter, brighter, brighter. The floor of the stage is beginning to burn from the raw heat of the lights. Then the lights kick off one by one, and the chamber door hisses open. The man steps out, only he's changed. His skin glows orange, emitting light as if he's like sort of made of the sun. Strange smoke billows from his eyes and his mouth. The ground sizzles beneath his footsteps. The people in the audience cheer, and the newly created Sunbeam laughs. There's a certain madness in his eyes. Something was lost in that chamber. Even in this quick segment, it's clear from his mannerisms. He's off. He twitches. He doesn't seem quite sane. And then he laughs and says, "They'll all pay today." We're going to cut to the Red Rocket Lab. We see Wei and Hanzu tinkering with the suit. There's now 3 of them, suit 3, 4, and 5. We can see the numbers on each of them. Wei says, "I'm thinking it's ready for a weapon systems test. I mean, it's all green on paper, and the flight test went well." Hanzu says, "Where are we going to test a weapon system?" Wei says, "I don't know, to be honest. Be the apartment?" Hanzu looks at him. "The apartment?" Suddenly, we're going to see a news report flashing on the TV in their office. We can see Sunbeam attacking civilians on the street. He's launching blasts from his hands and flying through the city. He destroys a tank and kills some military man before turning his attention to civilians who he burns to a crisp. They sort of disintegrate into ash as the beams of his blasts hit them. Wei unmutes the TV. The state can confirm the deaths of over 30 in the attack. As the rampage of this metahuman continues, we are left to wonder how long this will last and how he will be stopped. We're still not sure who this man is or what he wants, but we'll keep you updated. Wei turns and begins to walk towards the suit hanging on the wall, the one labeled 3. Hanzu says, "Wei, what are you doing?" Wei says, "Putting it on." Hanzu says, "We barely tested it. One test flight isn't enough to confirm its combat readiness." Wei says, "It's ready. We made the suit and we know it works. I'm going." Hanzu says, "Why? The state will handle this. And if you die, I don't know what we'll do. I know they're going to cancel this program, but without you, we don't stand a chance." Wei says, "They're going to cancel it anyway. We know that. You know how they think. They need to see the value before they'll support something. And this could be that." He hesitates. That doesn't seem right. But that doesn't matter. Those people need our help. And it's our duty to help them because we can. Wei begins to get into the suit. He puts it on piece by piece, attaching it to himself. He closes it around himself, then locks it with a hiss, turning the sort of power generator on the suit. He begins to speak through the mask in the sort of robotic voice of the mask. "If I'm gone, you will continue the work until they stop you because the people need us. They need the red rockets. Kids like us need heroes they can look up to. Someone who will help them and stick up to them, and I'll be damned if I let the chance to give it to them pass." He begins to hover off the ground. He activates some sort of button on the wall, and a slot in the roof begins to open up, something they've clearly installed. He flies up through the hole, leaving the room. We see a shot of Hanzu as he turns and looks at the other rocket suit. He says, "Oh, damn it all. We're gonna follow Wei as he flies through the city." He laughs as he does. The suit works. Everything's working. We see police and military vehicles moving down the streets towards the metahuman. The camera moves down and we follow the police vehicles as they pull up. We see Sunbeam launch a yellow beam of light and blow a cop car apart, disintegrating 3 police officers. He laughs. "The mighty Chinese military, ashes beneath me. Look upon your mighty oppressors." He turns and lets a massive beam of light slice apart the ground. He laughs, turning the beam until it slices a building apart. It begins to pile into rubble. We can see people running from the collapse, a mother carrying a baby, a young boy, and another woman. They almost make it out of the reach of the falling building. Almost. The shadow of a large chunk of rock climbs over them and covers them. The mother screams and the woman tries to cover the young boy. In a blur of motion, in a crash of metal and stone, something stops the boulder. The woman looks up and we see Red Rocket, Way, catching the stone in the air. The suit groans under the strain as he tries to keep it from crushing them. He says, "Come on, come on!" He gives the suit more power, and with a grunt of effort, he manages to push the stone aside. The boy looks up at the Red Rocket and cringes in fear. Way lifts the faceplate, revealing his face. He smiles. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here to help. I'm gonna stop him. For you." Way smiles again, salutes the boy, then turns into the air, dropping his faceplate. The kid's eyes grow wide. He says, "Oh, wow." The woman with him says, "Yeah, wow." Way flies towards Sunbeam. Sunbeam, surprised, turns to shoot a beam at Way, but Way pivots in the air, dodging. He slams into Sunbeam, throwing the two of them towards the ground. Sunbeam slams into the ground and Red Rocket follows, launching a fist after metal fist into Sunbeam's face. Sunbeam lets out a snarl. We can see blood running from his nose and sizzling on his skin. Kind of a cool effect. He grabs a hold of Way's hand, and the suit metal begins to slowly melt under the heat of it. Using his other suit, Way presses a button, and a gun pops out. He turns it, facing it right towards Sunbeam's head, and pulls the trigger. Nothing happens. It clicks several times. We can hear Way through the mask. "Shit. Weapons test." Sunbeam throws Way off him, sending him spiraling. We can see part of the suit is melted on his left side, and his right arm is no longer functioning. Way holds the other good hand on his suit into a fist and runs towards Sunbeam, using the suit's sort of thrusters as like a force behind his running. He launches a fist right towards Sunbeam and smacks him again. This time Sunbeam sort of dodges to the side, barely taking the hit. With his other hand, Sunbeam shoots a beam of energy right through Way. It cuts into the suit, but doesn't penetrate all the way, throwing Way to the ground. In a spiral, the suit begins to pop up warning signs. Malfunction, malfunction. Way struggles to stand on the ground, but the suit won't let him. Sunbeam approaches him, still bleeding from his nose and clearly battered from the suit. It clearly left an impact on him. His hands begin to glow with energy. His eyes pour more smoke, and the air around him seems to warp with the heat. He's about to kill Way when something slams into him, sending him towards the ground again. It's Hanzu in the 4 suit. Hanzu smacks into the Sunbeam with his fist, sending Sunbeam flying back. Sunbeam turns to fire at him, but Hanzu's faster. He pops out his hand and the gun appears. He fires 2 shots, and this time it works. One bullet is sort of disintegrated by the heat, but the other one punches right through Sunbeam's stomach. Sunbeam lets out a scream and falls to the ground as blood runs from him. The sort of energy around him begins to dim until it's non-existent. All that's left is Sunbeam, only barely glowing, no heat at all, passed out on the ground. Hanzu lets out a yell of success and turns to check on Way. Way sort of struggles to his feet. The suit is sort of coming back online again. We'll say his operations are sort of becoming nominal. Hanzu says, "Are you okay?" Way says, "You came." Hanzu says, "Yeah, I wasn't gonna let you get all the glory." "We got him." Way says, "Yeah, he wasn't that tough, right?" Hanzu says, "I don't know, it looks like he got you pretty good." Way says, "Yeah, well, you know, I was fighting him by myself." Hanzu says, "You think you can fly?" Way checks his diagnostics. "Yeah, I think so." Hanzu says, "That's good, because I don't think we want to have to answer these military guys' questions." We can see the military guys begin to slowly approach Sunbeam and the 2 rockets. They begin to raise their guns. Way says, "Yeah, probably not a good idea." They begin to sort of take off. Way sort of like haphazardly makes it up into the air, and we'll say we see them fly off. We'll see them land back in their office through the hole in the wall. Way begins to take his broken suit off to do repairs, like almost immediately. Like we'll say he wants to get right back into it. But as they do, we see military men begin to enter the room quickly. They're armed, and they swarm the rockets, pointing their rifles towards Way and Han. A man who's clearly a higher rank based on his medals and sort of rankings says, "Who authorized you? That suit is classified technology. You were not cleared for the field." Han says, "We." The military man says, "Who authorized you?" We hear a voice, It's deep and it comes from behind the military man. I did. I gave them clearance. There was clearly no other choice. Congratulations on the successful test, Rocket Team. We're going to see the head general from the Get Out guys step out from the crowd of military men. Now, I'd appreciate it if you stopped pointing your rifles at my top men. These men are heroes. The military men stand down and begin to leave the room. Soon it's just the general and the rockets. Wei asks, why? As he takes the last part of the suit off. The general says, because you had guts, and clearly you made that suit work. I think the rockets are going to be a fixture. The media is all over you. They're calling you the hero of China. They've already figured out who both of you are. Your program will be funded, and you will be authorized to handle certain extreme cases such as this. You're both captains now. Congratulations. Wei and Han both bow in respect. Wei says, thank you, sir. The general says, don't thank me. Just keep up the good work. That'll be all. Get that suit fixed up. We're going to need you to make some news appearances. Do a couple scripted interviews. I'll have my people send you the information. He turns and leaves the room, and the two rockets sit in silence for a while. Then they turn and look at each other and begin to laugh. We're going to see Wei and Han in their apartment, which we've never seen before. They pop a bottle of champagne and pour glasses for each other. They sort of do a cheers. Han says, to the rockets. And Wei says, to the rockets. We actually did it. We're going to hear a ring at the door. Han is going to look at Wei, who shrugs. Wei's going to make his way over to the door and open it. We see a woman standing there. We recognize her as the woman who Wei saved earlier. She was with the boy. But if you've seen the Get Out guys, it's also clearly Wei's wife from that script. I think she appears in the first act, and she's going to appear again in the third. Wei says, it's you, the woman from the apartment today. She says, yeah, and you're the robot man. Wei nods, are you okay? I mean, that was a bad situation. She says, I'm fine, thanks to you. Wei says, and the boy? The woman says, he's fine. Won't stop talking about you. The hero of Beijing. The Red Rocketeer. Look, I figured out where you lived and came to thank you. I'm not trying to stalk you or anything, but I just wanted to tell you in person that you saved my life and the life of my nephew and my sister. I can never thank you enough. Wei says, you didn't have to do that. Honestly, it's fine. The woman says, bullshit. Sort of crassly. We can see Wei sort of taken aback by that. She says, you saved my nephew's life tonight. The least I can do is bring you some food. She holds up a little bag and hands it to Wei. Wei takes the bag. As she does, she can see burns on his arm from where the sunbeam grabbed the suit and melted through it. The woman says, you're hurt. Wei says, it's nothing, just a little burn. The woman says, I'm a doctor, and that's at least 3rd degree. Do you have a first aid kit? Wei says, yeah, in the bathroom. The woman says, perfect. She pushes back to him into the apartment. Wei follows behind her awkwardly. She looks back at him. The bathroom? Wei says, that way. He gestures, and she quickly enters the room. Wei looks at Hanzu confused, and Hanzu just shrugs. The woman quickly comes back with a first aid kit. She says, I thought the suit would keep you safe. Wei says, not always, but I'll make it better. I didn't anticipate temperatures like that in combat. The woman smiles at him. She says, yeah, I think I get that. I didn't expect my apartment to crumble down on top of me today, but hey, apparently these things happen. Wei laughs. Yeah, these things happen. She works on his arm for a little bit, and then, when she's satisfied with her work, smiles and says, I'm Finn, by the way. Wei says, I'm Wei. That's Hanzu. She turns and looks at Han as if noticing him for the first time. Oh, you're the other robot. Hanzu says, yeah, that's me, the other robot. We're going to cut back to the sort of talk show now out of nowhere. Like with that little joke, we're going to use that as the cutback point. The talk show host says, we all remember that moment well. And I have to thank you for your bravery on that day. Thanks to the work of you and Hanzu, many lives were saved that day. God only knows how bad the problem could have gotten. Wei says, there's no need to thank us. It was the right thing to do. The talk show host says, and how remarkable that you met your wife by saving her life. I'm sure all the ladies are jealous of that story. Wei says, I was the lucky one. I'm just glad I caught the building. The audience gives sort of light laughs. The talk show host laughs along too and says, well, folks, we're near the end of our show. But I think we have one last surprise in store. Mr. Wei, I believe you have something to tell us today? Wei says, I do, if you'll give me just a moment. He stands from the couch and works his way behind the curtains. There, Hanzu wraps him up in a hug. He says, "You did great." Wei said, "I had to. Are they ready?" Hanzu says, "Nervous, I think." Wei says, "I don't blame him. Let me talk to him." Wei walks over to where two nervous people sit. One is Mai and the other is Hao from the Get Out guys, the other two rockets. They're wearing their rocket suits with the helmets pulled back. The suits are labeled 5 and 6 respectively. Wei walks towards them and goes into parade rest. The two rockets salute him. Wei says, "At rest." They do. Wei says, "Are you ready?" Hao says, "Of course, sir." Mei says, Yes, sir." Wei smiles. "It's okay to be nervous." Mai says, I've just never done something like this." Wei says, "You're going to do great. We practiced and you're ready." Mai says, "You're right." Wei says, "You're a rocket now. Both of you. Rockets face our fear, and we don't back down." They both salute him. Wei says, "Now, let's go win an audience over." We get a shot of them walking out of the curtains. The curtains fall behind, blocking our view, and we hear clapping and cheering. The talk show host says, "That's right, folks. 2 new rockets have just joined the team. They're no longer just the Red Rockets, but the Red Rocket Brigade, and they're here to protect the people of China." Wei says through a loudspeaker, "We love our country and our people. As rockets, we promise, when something goes wrong, we'll always be there to protect you, no matter what." And we're going to cut to black. A perfect little miniature origin story for the Red Rockets.
Well, that was that. Oh wow, I'm probably on a list now, but we're not going to worry about that too much. I hope you all enjoyed that deeply tragic origin story. But hey, things are looking up for the Rockets, right? So if you haven't watched it yet, go ahead and check out part 2 to see what happens to the new Red Rocket Brigade featured in the script. I hope you all enjoyed. Like and subscribe. I think the next Bjorn, I guess we're going to stick with that name. The next Bjorn is actually for an unrevealed character, and that character will be revealed in the Get Out Guys Act 3, which is coming out this Friday, I believe, as of recording this video, and if not Friday, then Saturday. So thank you all for watching, and check that out when it comes out. Alright, I've been Bjorn, I'll see you all in the next one.